Hi, my name is Glenn Ayers. I'm our Cultural Programs Manager for the Office of Arts and Culture for the City of Dallas. This is the FY 2020-21 Cultural Organizations Program Info Session. We're going to go through these program guidelines and general information about the program and get you hopefully set up for the application period that is currently open. If you have any questions, you can leave us a comment on Facebook or email me at my contact, which is at the very end of this slideshow. So let's go ahead and get started. Just a little bit about the Office of Arts and Culture. Our vision per our cultural policy is an equitable, diverse, and connected community whose residents and visitors thrive through meaningful arts and cultural experiences in every neighborhood across Dallas. And our mission is to support and grow a sustainable cultural ecosystem that ensures all residents and visitors have opportunities to experience arts and culture throughout the city. With our cultural policy, we have a cultural equity statement, which is in Dallas, we envision a city of people whose success and well-being are not predetermined by their race, age, disability, sexual orientation, gender, social status, zip code, or citizen status. We recognize that artistic and cultural expression are fundamental to the development of our identity as individuals and as a community at large. We assert the right for all people to have access to the arts and cultural experiences throughout Dallas. We recognize the historic legacies of racism, overt bias, and injustice that shape our present reality, and the Office of Arts and Culture will serve as a convener and connector to catalyze equity in the policies and practices of its partners across the Dallas arts ecosystem. So a little bit about the basics of the Cultural Organizations Program, or COP. COP is the operational year-round support program that we have through the Office of Arts and Culture. It will run for our next fiscal year, which is October 1, 2020 to September 30 of 2021. This particular funding program receives its funds through a couple different sources, which are the general fund, which is City of Dallas taxpayer dollars, and the hotel occupancy tax as well. Currently for this year, we support 34 cultural organizations in this program. So a little bit about the timeline for this particular application period and the subsequent year. So right now, our application is currently open for COP. It will close on April 27 at 11:59 p.m. All of our applications are online. There will then be our panel presentations, which will take place from May 12 to 15, and those particular days are separated by organizational tier, and we'll talk about what that means in a minute. As we work through our current sort of situation with a lot of sort of sheltering in place and our social distancing, we are working on alternative solutions for our panel presentations as well, hopefully something just remote. Throughout the summer, we will, after those panel presentations, be working with our allocations committee, which is a committee of our full Arts and Culture Advisory Commission, to work on general funding recommendations. It will then go to the Arts and Cultural Advisory Commission for their recommendation, and then we will take those recommendations to full council for their approval by October. In October, after those approvals, we will initiate COP contract execution. In January of 2021, those organizations are eligible to receive their first payment. April 15 will be their second payment. And then the final payment is dispersed after the final report for the program and the final monthly report have been submitted. All of that, of course, is contingent on insurance requirements and other compliance requirements. Here are some broad general eligibility requirements for the COP program. We're looking for applicants who are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, who are established arts and culture organization in the city limits of Dallas with a minimum of one paid part-time director, manager, staff member. The organization needs to have a 3-year operational history with an administrative office in the city of Dallas. That does not include a PO box number. It also does not include like Highland Park, University Park, or Cockrell Hill. It must be the city proper, city limits of Dallas. The organization needs to have a minimum operational budget of $100,000 based on their prior year's actual audited expenses. Every year, once you're in the program, you'll be required to complete an annual financial audit. And then the primary focus of operation and programming must be in the city limits of Dallas. So that's a minimum of 50% of your operation, of the applicant's operation, must be in the city limits of Dallas. For first-time applicants, so those are applicants who are submitting a COP application for the first time, or those who have applied for the COP program in the past but have not been funded through the program, you'll need to contact OAC Cultural Program staff just to go through the entire sort of guidelines and capacity and understanding of the program in its full detail and depth. And then also be prepared to submit your organization's charter and bylaws, your 501c3 IRS letter of determination, and a 3-year audited financial history, or your Form 990s in that case. So a little bit about the FY 2020-21 COP application. You must, as an applicant, read the guidelines in their entirety. The guidelines exist under Guidelines and Resources on the COP webpage of the dallasculture.org website. So please go through those. It's a requirement to say that you've read them on the application itself. The application lives online, and there's a link there, and also you can access it through the COP page of the dallasculture.org website. You'll find in the application 5 different steps, and that's sort of the application itself, which is mostly your narratives, your proposal, some of your events and attendance summaries, and then you will go to the next step, which is your 3-year financial summary and organization diversity numbers. Then you'll enter your COP events. So this can be as broad or specific as you would like it to be. If you want to list out every single exhibit, every single play or event that you're having, great. If you want to broaden that range to say, through these 3 months we will be doing this programming that will take place this many times, that's great as well. And really what that is for is to give the panelists a perspective of the scope of your organization's operation. You will then also be able to submit your supplemental materials in the next step. So my advice for this is less is more. Choose around 5 really strong materials that reflect the sort of quality and activity of your organization. And this again is to allow our panelists to really see what kind of product your organization produces. And then your final step is a certification statement. Part of the application process for COP is a review panel and selection process. So COP applications are evaluated by OAC Culture Program staff simply for compliance. Then those applications move forward to a panel review. These panels will review our applicants in sort of tiers based off of operational budget. So you'll see here that our tiers are separated 1 through 4, and then the respective budget sizes, 100 to 499,000, 500 to just under $1 million, $1 million to just under 5, and then 5 million and above. During those panel presentations, when you're there for your particular tier, your organization must be represented by principal figures. So this is your executive director, your artistic director, your board chair, any of sort of those key members. And anyone can attend these presentations, especially for support or for answering questions. The applicant organization will give a 10-minute presentation to our panel, and then the panel will have a 10-minute time frame to ask any questions that they have about that presentation. And then that's it. Just to give you an idea of what the process looks like after the panel review, OAC staff will compile your panel and OAC administrative scores and take those scores to the allocations committee. Once the allocations committee has a chance to review those scores, they will make a funding recommendation for our applicants. That recommendation will go to the Arts and Culture Advisory Commission, which is a body of appointed individuals by our council. They will review and then make their final recommendation on those funding levels for the applicants. That recommendation will go to the Quality of Life Arts and Culture Committee, which is a committee of full council for their recommendation. And then after that, it will go to full city council for their approval. So getting into some of our scoring. So we have two sets of scores that we'll be looking at, panel scores and OAC administrative scores. The panel will score you on 70 points, and they are going to be looking at three main categories: your quality of services, impact of community programming and neighborhood outreach, and an overall score. So for quality of services, we're looking that the organization exhibits a commitment to high quality standards in its artistic and cultural services and programming for Dallas residents and visitors, and that's 35 points. For the impact of community programming and neighborhood outreach, which is 20 points, we're looking that the organization has a broad and significant impact on the residents of Dallas by direct neighborhood community outreach or an intentional inclusion and involvement of underserved populations and or outlying neighborhoods or communities at a headquarter location. So what this means, and we can look at it in two different ways, is either an organization is going into particular neighborhoods or communities to engage those residents, or if an organization has a home base, a headquarter location, we are looking at what that intentionality and deliberate action is to include a particular population or particular intended audience into that space, because maybe that space has particular assets that can only be found in that location. So what is that intentional inclusion or involvement of that population into your space? And then the last is that overall score, which is 15, and it's the overall evaluation of the organization, that the organization demonstrates a benefit to the residents and visitors of Dallas through a strong application and panel presentation. So the next portion of scoring we'll be looking at is your OAC staff administrative score, which totals 30 points. We'll be looking at contract compliance and financial viability, organization program management, organization board governance, and an adherence to cultural policy diversity criteria. Looking at contract compliance and financial viability, we're looking that the organization has shown the capacity to comply with requirements that are required by the COP contract, measured from the prior fiscal year or most recent application. The organization has sound financial viability in fundraising, development, and unrestricted net assets, which again is measured by the organization's most recent audit or Form 990. So there's two ways to look at this. If you are a returning applicant, we're looking at your monthly report submission and your audit submission. So if you submitted your monthly reports on time, 75 to 100% of the time, you'll get 2 points, 51 to 74% of the time, 1 point, or 50% or below, 0 points. And for your audit submission, if you submitted your audit on time, which was 6 months after the close of your organization's fiscal year, you'll receive 2 points. If not, 0 points. For new applicants, we're looking that you submitted your IRS nonprofit status letter and that you have also submitted your financial audit or IRS Form 990 with your application. As we look at financial viability, we're looking at two main scoring criteria. We're looking at fundraising expense. So there's 2 points for your fundraising ratio. And so if your ratio for fundraising is less than 20%, that is 2 points. If it's between 20 and 40, 1 point, and a ratio more than 40% is 0. And that is your ratio based off of your fundraising expense versus the fundraising revenue received. Your other scoring criteria is the change in unrestricted net assets. So this is basically based on your organization's prior fiscal year. Is your organization running in a surplus or a deficit, 2 or 0 points respectively? For organization program management, we're looking that the organization has performed in a reliable manner in the past in terms of contract sustainability and in terms of services, public events provided, and event attendance. So for returning applicants, we're looking at services and attendance based off of your prior year reports. So have you met or exceeded your proposed services and attendance numbers? Then 4 points. If you have not met those proposed services or attendance numbers, 2 points. And if you have not met them 50% lower than your proposed service numbers and attendance, then you will receive 0 points. For new applicants, we're looking at your 3-year services and attendance history. And so we're looking at, do you show an increase in both your second and third year services and attendance? If so, you'll receive 4 points. If there's an increase between only one between the second and third year services, that is 2 points. And if you show a decrease or no change in both the second and third year, that is 0 points. For your organization board governance, we're looking at the organization has a give or get policy with its board of directors. In the most recently completed fiscal year, what percentage of board members contributed either by personal donation or securing predetermined funding from a third party for the organization? So if you have that kind of board participation at a 90 to 100% level, that is 2 points. From 75 to 89 is 1 point, and then less than 75 is 0 points. So sometimes this might also include a board member providing in-kind services, which equate to that give or get policy, which is also acceptable in those calculations. Next, we'll be looking at your adherence to cultural policy diversity criteria. So the first of that is board diversity. So per the City of Dallas cultural policy as adopted November 28, 2018, the following goals have been put into place for cultural organizations to demonstrate a commitment to diverse community representation of the organization's board. And so these numbers will be taken from your FY 2020-21 COP application. And so the requirements are based off of the organization's tier size. And so to receive 5 points, we're looking at 10% or more for tiers 1 and 2, 20%, and then 30% for tiers 3 and 4. And then for 3 points, it's in that percentage range per tier, and 0 the following. So when we're looking at these particular percentages, what we are looking at that calculation is percentages of non-majority board members. So whatever the majority racial, ethnic composition of your board is, we're looking at the non-majority numbers of that. That goes the same for your staff diversity. So the only exception is that Tier 1 is not held to a particular standard of staff diversity, and that is because of the organizations in Tier 1 generally do not have significant numbers of staff and are therefore exempt from these staff diversity goals. So again, it's split into different percentage criteria per tier as laid out here. The final diversity criteria is the equity, diversity, and inclusion policy. Per the City of Dallas cultural policies adopted November 28, 2018, organizations receiving operational support through COP must have measurable goals related to equity, diversity, and inclusion that are board approved and published on the organization's website. So in the application, I will be asking you to submit a link to where those policies are published on your website, as well as uploading the document itself. So there are just some general COP compliance materials that we require throughout the year. And so this takes place through the entire contracted period, which is again October 1, 2020 to September 30, 2021. I've mentioned that an audited financial report must be submitted 6 months after the close of an organization's fiscal year. Any organization that is in the COP program must complete monthly events and attendance reports. At the end of the year, there will be a required final report to be submitted. And that final report is the Business Inclusion and Development Report, which is your minority and women-owned business enterprises figures that you have for that. You're also required to maintain insurance compliance through the entire contracted year. Then also use logo and credit line materials as laid out in the guidelines, and then also complimentary tickets. And again, for more information on that, please see those guidelines. And this is just some quick information about permits. So because you'll be doing programming year-round that we are helping support through your operational funds, we want to make sure that you're compliant in as many ways as possible dependent on your programming. So if there are any issues with or any programming that involve tents, liquid propane, pyrotechnics, you're going to want to get a hold of the fire department at that phone number. Especially if you're in a building that you're using sort of in a non-traditional way, you're going to want to get a hold of the fire marshal. Any programming that you're doing at a park in the city of Dallas, you'll want to reserve that park to make sure that no one else is using it at that time. So please reach out to the Dallas Parks and Recreation Department. If you're doing any programming that involves street or lane closures, filming, outdoor gatherings, using portable restrooms, or even larger tents, you're going to need to get a hold of the Office of Special Events. And anything involving the sale of alcoholic beverages, please make sure that you are compliant with the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, TABC. If you're using a concessionaire or a third party for that, they typically have that license, but I just want to make sure that you double check that. Again, for anything where you might be occupying a vacant building, you'll want to make sure that you have a certificate of occupancy for that building. Anything where you're going to be attaching or affixing to the facade of the building, that ends up becoming an issue as well. So make sure that you get a hold of building inspections. Any vendor permits that you might need for sale of merchandise, or if you're selling food or beverages, make sure that you are compliant with Consumer Health Department. And that's it. Those are the very sort of basic run through of the guidelines for the FY 2020-21 COP program. So if you have any questions, please make sure to reach out. Again, my name is Glenn Ayers. I'm our Cultural Programs Manager. And then my other Cultural Programs staff are our Cultural Programs Coordinators, Liz Acklin and Adriana Portillo. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email us and then see the COP website for the full guidelines. This presentation will be posted on there as well, both the recorded and unrecorded if you don't want to listen to me anymore, as well as other resources and materials that might help you in your process for applications. So thanks so much.